Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on something pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This article I found claims that something like 95% of people are living on autopilot and totally missing out on what it really means to be spiritually awakened.
Okay. That's a big claim.
Right. And it even gives us like 6 specific habits to let go of if we want to like break free from this autopilot thing.
Hmm. That is bold. I'm curious to see if it goes beyond the typical,
Yeah.
self-help stuff.
Yeah, like is it just another listicle or is there like some real depth to it? That's what we're going to find out.
Okay. Anyway.
I gotta admit, I'm a little skeptical too, but I'm also kind of fascinated by this idea that just letting go of some habits could, lead to a more awakened life. Have you ever felt stuck in a rut? Just like going through the motions?
Oh, yeah, totally. I think everyone feels that sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what this article made me think about all those times when I'm just kind of on autopilot.
For sure. It's definitely a call for some self-reflection. The first habit the article talks about is our tendency to make assumptions. Those little leaps of logic that can really mess with our
Oh,
relationships
yeah.
and even our own peace of mind.
Okay, so assumptions. The article gives this example of like assuming someone's upset with you because they don't text back right away. I know I've totally been there. You start making up all these stories in your head,
Oh, for sure.
and most of the time it turns out to be nothing.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is our brains are kind of hardwired to make assumptions, right? It's our way of trying to fill in the gaps and make sense of the world.
Yeah, like connect the dots.
But the problem is we often fill those gaps with the worst case scenarios, and that just leads to anxiety and negativity.
It's like our minds are constantly running these little drama scripts in the background.
Exactly. But the article suggests something really powerful.
Uh,
What if we replaced assumptions with curiosity and open communication?
okay, so instead of like stewing over why someone didn't text back, you
Yeah.
just ask them.
Exactly. Imagine all the stress we could avoid if we just paused and asked instead of jumping to conclusions.
That makes so much sense. It's like shifting from knowing to wanting to know.
Yes.
Instead of getting stuck in our heads, we can actually like connect with people in a more genuine way.
Absolutely. And this goes way beyond our personal relationships, right? Think about how often we make assumptions at work or in our communities.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It can cause so much unnecessary tension.
It's like assumptions are these invisible barriers that keep us from really seeing and connecting with people.
That's a great way to put it. And by becoming aware of this tendency and choosing curiosity over assumption, we can break down those barriers and have more authentic, fulfilling interactions.
Totally. Okay, so we've tackled assumptions. The article's next point is about avoiding difficulties, and I think we've all been there.
It's so tempting.
It says running from our problems is like trying to outrun our own shadow. Sounds pretty exhausting to me.
Definitely highlights how pointless it is. The article says that problems that we don't deal with, they tend to just grow over time.
Yeah, like that saying, what you resist persists.
Exactly.
Their article uses the example of like marital problems.
Yeah.
It can be tempting to just avoid those tough conversations, but it actually ends up creating more distance and resentment.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because facing those difficulties, even though it feels uncomfortable in the moment, could actually be the more courageous and ultimately more freeing path.
I see what you mean. It's about shifting from avoidance to engagement.
Exactly. Even if it's just baby steps.
Yeah, little by little. It's like we're building a muscle, our ability to handle challenges head on.
That's a great way to think about it. But we don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
It's a process,
Mhm.
gradually building up our capacity to face those things that feel difficult. Think about it. Every time we confront a challenge, whether it's a personal insecurity or a conflict at work, or even just a task we've been putting off, we're proving to ourselves that we can handle it.
It's like expanding our comfort zone bit by bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as we do that, we develop more self-confidence, resilience, and even a deeper trust in our ability to handle whatever life throws at us.
Okay, so the first 2 habits are all about awareness. Becoming aware of our assumptions and choosing to face our challenges instead of running from them. The next one is something I think a lot of us struggle with, especially in today's world. Seeking external validation. It's that constant need for approval from others, which can be pretty exhausting.
It really can. The article compares it to trying to fill a bottomless cup.
Oh, wow.
No matter how much praise or recognition we get, it's never enough.
We always want more.
We're always chasing that next hit of approval.
And that makes us feel so vulnerable and insecure because our sense of worth becomes totally dependent on what other people think.
Exactly.
I've been there for sure.
It's a common trap.
Mm.
But the article contrasts this with the experience of people who are spiritually awakened. It suggests that they've shifted their focus inward, and they find validation from within rather than from external sources.
So it's like they've realized that their worthiness isn't something they need to earn. It's already there.
Exactly.
The article uses this metaphor of a ship anchored in itself during a storm.
I like that.
It's a powerful image, right?
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that when we're grounded in our own sense of self-worth, other people's opinions and judgments don't have as much power over us.
Beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
It speaks to the idea that true validation comes from aligning with our own values, our own truth, our own sense of purpose.
It's about recognizing that we are inherently worthy regardless of what anyone else thinks or says.
Exactly. And it's not about becoming arrogant or ignoring feedback. It's about cultivating self-acceptance and self-love so that we can move through the world with more confidence and resilience.
This is resonating with me.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next habit is really tied to that, conforming to societal expectations. The article says following those norms can feel like wearing a mask that doesn't fit.
Oh, yeah. I relate to that.
And I think we've all felt pressure to fit in to meet certain expectations, whether it's in our careers or relationships or just everyday life.
Absolutely. And the article challenges us to question those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually aligned with who we are and what we value? Or are we conforming out of fear of judgment?
Yeah, it's like we're trying to force ourselves into a box that someone else made.
Right. And in the process, we lose sight of what makes us unique and special. The article has this quote I love. Those who splash their original being wherever they go are the ones who truly stand out.
I like that.
It's a reminder that authenticity is way more powerful than just fitting in.
It's about having the courage to be ourselves, even if it means going against the grain.
It's not always easy, especially in a world that puts so much pressure on us to conform.
Yeah, for sure.
But the rewards of living authentically are huge. Imagine the freedom and sense of purpose that comes from being true to yourself.
I'm starting to see a theme here. Letting go seems to be a key part of this whole spiritual awakening thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And speaking of letting go, the next habit is the need to control everything. I think we can all relate to that in some way.
I know, I do. It's like, I think if I just try hard enough, I can control every little thing.
Oh, yeah?
My career, my relationships, even the weather. But of course, that's not how it works.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And the article makes the point that this obsession with control just creates more stress and suffering.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What's interesting is how the article separates control from influence. It says that while we can't control every outcome, we can focus on what we can influence.
Like what?
Our actions, our reactions, and our mindset.
I like the analogy they use. Trying to fit a square peg in a round hole versus guiding a river.
Yeah, control is forceful and ultimately pointless, while influence is more about working with the natural flow of things.
I see. So it's about surrendering to the uncertainty of life and trusting that even when things don't go according to plan,
Yes.
there's a bigger picture unfolding.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the final habit the article talks about: blaming others.
Ah, yes, the blame game.
We've all
I've been there. It's so easy to point fingers when things go wrong, right?
to make someone else responsible for our unhappiness.
But the article introduces this really cool concept, radical responsibility. It's about owning our experiences, both the good and the bad, and recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to them.
It's powerful stuff.
So instead of blaming others, we're taking responsibility for our own actions and feelings and how we choose to see things.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean we have to condone hurtful behavior or that we can't set boundaries. It just means we're choosing to focus on what we can control, our own responses and our own growth.
The article says that spiritually awakened people see uncomfortable emotions as opportunities for growth and exploration.
Wow, that's a big shift in perspective.
Right.
It shows the power of radical responsibility. Instead of seeing ourselves as victims of our circumstances,
Yeah.
we become active participants in our own lives.
I love that. So we've explored these 6 habits assumptions: avoiding difficulties, seeking external validation, conforming to expectations, controlling everything, and blaming others. It's a lot to take in, but it's so insightful.
It really is. It's like a framework for understanding how these seemingly small habits can really hold us back.
Totally. And maybe even keep us from living a more awakened, fulfilling life.
Exactly. It's been fascinating exploring these ideas with you.
Me too. And I'm excited to dig even deeper into how these habits show up in our everyday lives.
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome back, everyone. As we dig deeper into these 6 habits, it's kind of striking how interconnected they are.
Oh yeah, they definitely feed into each other.
Well, they create this cycle that can be tough to break out of.
You're right. For example, if you're always looking for validation from others, You might be more likely to just conform to what society expects, even if it doesn't feel right.
Right, like you're trying to please everyone else.
Exactly. And that can lead to feeling like you're not being authentic.
Yeah, not being true to yourself.
And then that might trigger a need to control your surroundings to try and feel better.
Oh, I see. And then when things inevitably don't go according to plan,
Yeah.
it's easy to start blaming others,
It's like a chain reaction. Each habit kind of fuels the next one.
creating this web of negativity that's hard to escape.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is just becoming aware of these habits and how they're connected is a huge first step.
Oh, okay.
It's like shining a light on those patterns so we can start to make different choices.
So where do we even begin? Like, it feels overwhelming to try and tackle all 6 habits at once.
You're right. It's definitely a journey, not a race.
Right.
The article emphasizes that even small steps can make a big difference.
Okay.
Instead of trying to change everything at once, maybe just focus on one area where you're ready to make a shift.
Okay. That feels more manageable. Maybe we could break it down and look at some tips for each habit. Like, what about assumptions?
Sure.
We talked about replacing them with curiosity. But how do we actually do that in real life?
Well, it starts with noticing when you're jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, those moments.
Instead of letting your mind run wild with stories, just pause for a second and ask yourself, what evidence do I actually have to support this thought? Is there another way to see this situation?
So, like, instead of assuming my partner's mad at me because they're quiet, I could just ask, hey, is everything okay? You seem a little off.
Exactly. And then really listen to their response without interrupting or getting defensive.
Okay.
That simple shift from assuming to inquiring can really change your relationships.
What about avoiding difficulties? We all know it's better to face our problems, but it's so tempting to just avoid them.
It is tempting. But instead of thinking of the problem as this huge obstacle, try breaking it down into smaller steps.
Okay, smaller chunks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even if it's something small, like a task you've been putting off,
Yeah.
create a plan and tackle it one step at a time.
Okay, I like that. And even those small wins can build momentum.
Exactly. Facing challenges head on, no matter how small, builds resilience and confidence.
Okay, so it's like training for a marathon. You don't start by running 26 miles.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Oh, it's seeking external validation. This one feels so relevant in today's world with social media and everything.
It's a tough one. It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we're not good enough.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others.
The comparison trap is real. So how do we break free from that need for approval and find validation from within?
Yeah, that's the big question.
One powerful tool is mindfulness. Taking time each day to connect with yourself, whether it's through meditation, journaling, or even just being in nature, can help you tap into your own inner wisdom.
So the more we connect with ourselves, the less we need that validation from others.
Exactly. It's also important to have a supportive inner circle. Surround yourself with people who appreciate you for who you are, not for what you do or how you look.
Okay, that makes sense. What about conforming to societal expectations? I feel like that's closely tied to seeking external validation.
Definitely. It's like when we're always looking for approval, we're more likely to just conform to what others think is acceptable.
Even if it doesn't feel authentic to us.
Exactly. The article reminds us that true happiness comes from embracing our own unique qualities.
Okay, so how do we shed those expectations and start living more authentically, especially when those expectations are so deeply ingrained in our culture?
It starts with getting to know yourself better.
Mm.
What are your values? What are you passionate about? What makes you feel truly alive?
Okay.
Once you have a clearer sense of who you are, you can start making choices that align with that, even if they go against the grain.
And it's okay to be different, right?
Absolutely. In
Right.
fact, is what makes life interesting.
Embrace your quirks. Okay, next up. Controlling everything. I definitely struggle with this one.
Yeah, it's a common one.
Yeah.
It's hard to let go of the reins and just trust that things will work out.
Any advice on how to loosen my grip?
It's natural to want to control things.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the difference between control and influence.
Right.
We can't control everything, but we can choose how we respond to situations and what actions we take.
So instead of trying to force things to go a certain way,
Yeah,
I can focus on setting intentions, taking action, and then letting go of the outcome.
exactly. It's about surrendering to the flow of life instead of constantly fighting against it.
That sounds way more peaceful.
It is. Okay, finally, let's talk about blaming others. We touched on radical responsibility earlier,
Yeah,
but I'd love to hear more about how we can actually practice that in our daily lives.
me too.
It starts with noticing when you're blaming someone else. Instead of pointing fingers, ask yourself, what role did I play in this? What can I learn from this experience?
So even if someone else's actions contributed to a negative outcome, I can still choose to focus on my own response and what I can learn from it.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't about condoning hurtful behavior or avoiding setting boundaries. It's about taking ownership of your own experience
Okay.
and empowering yourself to move forward.
This deep dive has been amazing. I'm starting to see how letting go of these habits can really create a more peaceful, authentic, and fulfilling life.
It's been great exploring this with you. It's all about progress, not perfection.
Totally. Small steps can lead to big changes. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll look at how these habits specifically impact our relationships, our careers, and our overall well-being. Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's incredible how much we've unpacked about these 6 habits. Now I'm really curious to see how they play out in different areas of our lives, like our relationships, our work, even just our overall sense of well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time to make it practical. Let's start with relationships. Imagine if we approached every interaction with that curiosity we talked about, instead of just jumping to assumptions. Think about how much deeper our connections could be.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing the people we care about with fresh eyes every time.
Exactly. And when conflicts come up,
Because let's face it, they always do.
they do. What if we saw those conflicts as opportunities to grow and understand each other better?
Instead of a battle to be won.
Exactly. Instead of getting defensive or blaming the other person, we could ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can we work together to find a solution?
It's a totally different approach.
It is. And when we let go of that need to control every little detail in the relationship,
Yeah, give up the reins a little.
we create space for both people to be their true selves.
That's where the real magic happens.
Absolutely. That's where true intimacy and connection can flourish.
Okay, so letting go of these habits can really transform our relationships. And what about our careers? How do these principles apply at work?
Well, imagine approaching your work with more courage and being open to those challenges that inevitably come up.
Oh yeah, there are plenty of those.
Instead of seeing setbacks as failures, what if we saw them as opportunities to learn and grow?
Yeah, like reframing it.
It changes your whole perspective.
It's like shifting from a fear of failing to a curiosity about what you can learn from it.
Exactly. And when you let go of that need for external validation, you can focus on doing work that truly aligns with your values and passions.
Yeah, it's not about chasing titles or recognition anymore.
Exactly. It's about finding that internal sense of purpose and fulfillment.
And maybe even having the guts to step off the beaten path if something else is calling you.
Exactly. Following your own unique path, even if it's unconventional, can lead to so much more joy and satisfaction.
It's exciting to think about. Okay, let's zoom out a little and talk about the bigger picture, our overall well-being. It seems like letting go of these habits could have a huge impact on our mental and emotional health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you stop trying to control everything and blame others for your problems, it naturally reduces so much stress and anxiety.
Yeah, it frees up so much mental space.
Exactly. You can then use that energy to focus on things that actually nourish you.
Whether it's spending time with loved ones, pursuing creative hobbies, or just being out in nature.
It's all about creating a life that feels more balanced and fulfilling.
It's like shifting from this constant state of striving to a state of just being present and accepting things as they are.
I love that. And the more present and accepting we are, the more resilient we become when challenges come up.
It's like building up this inner strength that helps us navigate those inevitable ups and downs with more grace.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's like we've discovered this hidden toolkit for living a more awakened and fulfilling life.
Totally. And it's not about becoming some perfectly enlightened being or anything.
Oh, no.
It's about those small conscious choices we make every day that move us in the right direction.
Beautifully said. It's about embracing the journey of letting go and discovering the freedom and peace that comes with it.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. What is one small step you can take today to start letting go of one of these habits? Maybe it's replacing an assumption with a question facing a task you've been avoiding, or just taking a few minutes to connect with yourself.
Even the smallest actions can have a big impact.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've gained some valuable insights that you can take with you. Keep exploring, keep growing, and keep letting go. We'll see you next time.